When we think about protecting the nation, our eyes usually go to the southern border or to all the existential threats that are coming from abroad. But today we're going to talk about a threat to women young and old everywhere. Today's guest, Senator Ted Cruz, who is championing a bill to not only allow nationwide access to in vitro fertilization, but is fighting back against the AI-driven scourge to young women everywhere that's being used to dismiss, and humiliate them. But if you know anything about Senator Ted Cruz, watch out. Relief is on the way. Today, a special edition of 13th and Park.
We give you information, not a panic attack.
I mean, look what's going on. I mean, my God.
This was it. Like, kids were gonna die.
That time is gone forever.
This is the biggest story in America.
We weren't prepared for this.
Don't you want to speak truth to power?
Toughest thing I ever had to do.
So, Senator, you took to the floor recently of the United States Senate to stand up for IVF, in vitro fertilization rights for all women nationally.
IVF is a medical miracle that has brought the joy of parenthood to millions of families who might otherwise have never experienced it. And I asked Senator Britt if she would join together in drafting legislation, federal legislation, that would be a clear, straightforward, ironclad protection for IVF. Know that our bill will ensure that IVF remains 100% protected by law.
And yet, every Democratic senator voted against that, having made as a centerpiece of the 24 campaign choice for women everywhere. Is that not the ultimate act of hypocrisy?
It's complete cynicism. I strongly support IVF, and to the best of my knowledge, all 100 senators do. I think IVF is a medical miracle, and over 2% of all births in America today come through IVF. There are over 8 million babies that have been born through IVF. And through this incredible technology, moms and dads that desperately want to give birth and raise a little boy, a little girl, and love that child, they're able to do so. And so in my view, I think IVF is profoundly pro-family, and every senator supports it. Now, as you noted, the Democrats have decided very cynically to mount a campaign this fall where they want to scare a whole lot of parents, and they want to tell a whole lot of parents that IVF is in jeopardy. And some of that was caused by the Alabama Supreme Court decision several months ago. And so when that confusion was there, many parents genuinely confused and concerned. I approached Katie Britt, my colleague from Alabama and a good friend, and I said, look, let's draft this together. Let's draft legislation that is a clear, straightforward protection of IVF that puts in federal law an ironclad guarantee that IVF will be protected, that prohibits any state and any local government from banning IVF. And on the merits, this should be a bill that passes 100-0, because, as I said, every senator, to the best of my knowledge, supports IVF. Well, Katie Britt and I, and also Roger Marshall, went to the floor of the Senate. We tried to pass the bill by unanimous consent, and unfortunately, the Democrats stood up and objected. They blocked it. They killed the bill, and the reason, very cynically, is they don't want to protect IVF in federal law. What they want is an issue in November. All they had to do was just do nothing, just be quiet, and we would have passed this 100-0. But the Democrats had a political objective, and to give you a sense of just how absurd it is, Roger Marshall, before he was in the Senate, he was an OBGYN. He's performed hundreds of IVF cycles and delivered hundreds of babies, thousands of babies he's delivered, hundreds from IVF, and yet the Democrats absurdly are saying that an IVF doctor opposes IVF. It's politics at its most cynical, but sadly it's where today's Democrats are.
Well, let's talk about something that does have bipartisan support. The Take It Down Act, which you took to the floor to announce this week, backed by a lot of Democratic senators, basically to stop the practice of deepfake revenge pornography. We recently saw you on Fox News with a mom and her 15-year-old daughter talking about this. Let's cut to the clip.
A bipartisan group of senators targeting deepfake revenge pornography with new legislation. The Take It Down Act. Our next guest was targeted by an AI revenge porn scheme at her high school when she was just 14 years old. So tell me what happened to you, Elliston. You were a freshman in high school. You live in the Fort Worth area of Texas. So excited to go to high school. And what happened?
I had woken up on a Monday morning with numerous calls from my friends just telling me that these fake AI photos were going around.
Mom, she comes into your room. What happened?
Crying. It was devastating. I mean, as a mom, all you want to do is protect your child. And so there was no way for me to foresee anything like this ever happening. So we were totally outside of our element as we were trying to figure out what we do with this.
Yeah, look, this is very important bipartisan legislation that I introduced this week, and it's designed to protect especially kids online, but protect women and protect everyone. And we're seeing a growing pattern of people posting online on social media non-consensual intimate images. And there are really two different versions of it. One is two people who are in a romantic relationship and somebody consents to a picture or a video being taken. And then that relationship breaks up and somebody's unhappy and they post it as a matter of revenge. They say, okay, I'm going to get you. I'm going to make this public. That is a grotesque violation of privacy that is wrong. There is an even more recent incarnation of this, which is even more insidious. And it is using artificial intelligence, AI, to create deep fakes and to take someone who hasn't taken an explicit photo or video and use AI to make it appear that they have. And as you noted, when we announced this legislation earlier this week, I was joined by a 15-year-old girl from Aledo, Texas, up in North Texas, Elliston Berry. When she was 14, she was a freshman in high school, and she woke up one Monday morning with all sorts of texts and phone calls from her friends. And it turns out that another teenage boy at her school had taken a very innocent picture from social media and had used an app to alter it and create a deep fake to make it appear that she was nude. And then that teenage boy had created fake Snapchat accounts and sent it to a number of her classmates. And look, Elliston was crying. Her mother, Anna, joined us as well. Anna said her daughter was in tears. It's a nightmare for a teenage girl, and it's fundamentally wrong. My legislation, the Take It Down Act, number one, makes it a crime to post or share non-consensual intimate images. But number two, gives you a federal right to force big tech to take those images down, because right now they leave them up, and they often leave them up months or years and ignore the victims.
So let's talk about Caitlin Clark, who we just learned was snubbed by the United States women's basketball team for the Olympics.
Honestly, no disappointment. Like, I think it just gives you something to work for. That's a dream. Hopefully one day I can be there, and I think it's just a little more motivation. You remember that, and hopefully in 4 years, when 4 years comes back around, I can be there.
One of the most breakthrough athletes in women's sports in generations, and yet for some reason she's not selected. Your thoughts?
Look, I think it's utterly insane. Caitlin Clark, she's the leading college scorer in college basketball. She's generated massive interest in women's basketball, both the NCAAs, the viewership was off the charts, and now the WNBA. We just saw the highest rated WNBA game ever. And what happened? The selection committee for the Olympic team said, our biggest superstar that's generating the most interest, that's bringing the most people to care about the sport, we don't want her to participate. I think it's idiotic. I think it's petty. I think there's a whole lot of jealousy going on there. I think there's a lot of ugliness behind it. But just on the face of it, excluding Caitlin Clark from that team hurts every other woman on the team. It guarantees that there will be many, many fewer people watching the games than if she could participate. And given her skills, she could objectively contribute a ton to helping USA take home the gold.
So let's close with the southern border.
Yeah.
You're a United States Senator from Texas. You're right there on the front lines. Anything new to report?
It's an absolute disaster. It has never been remotely this bad. In 3.5 years under Joe Biden, we've seen over 11 million illegal immigrants come into this country. We are seeing every day, we're seeing just a steady deluge. And we're also seeing week after week after week, people being killed by violent criminals that come illegally into this country and are released. We just saw this past week Rachel Marin, a beautiful mother of 5 in suburban Maryland, murdered by an illegal immigrant who came into this country. We saw before that Laken Riley in Georgia, a 22-year-old woman out jogging, murdered by an illegal immigrant Joe Biden repeatedly released. We saw just in the past few days a 13-year-old girl in New York raped by an illegal immigrant that Joe Biden and the Democrats keep releasing. And over and over and over again, we're seeing Americans who are victims of violent crime. And then you put on top of that, 2 weeks ago, the news that broke that the Biden administration arrested 8 suspected terrorists affiliated with ISIS-K. They came from Tajikistan. They crossed the southern border. The Biden administration apprehended them, and they let them go. And they were arrested. They were arrested in New York and Philadelphia and Los Angeles on suspicion of terrorism. And ISIS-K, as you know, is the terrorist group that are Tajiks, which is where these 8 suspected terrorists are from, who committed the horrific terror attack in Moscow, murdering 145 people in an opera house with machine guns, just gunning down civilians. You know, I'm sorry to say, today, I believe we have a higher risk of a major terrorist attack than we have had at any point since September 11th. And Joe Biden and the Democrats, day after day after day, they're releasing terrorists, they're releasing suspected terrorists, and they're releasing violent criminals. And we're seeing Americans paying the price for this utter lawlessness.
Well, Senator, thank you for being on 13th and Park. And thank you for everything you're doing for the state of Texas and for America to keep us strong and safe.
Appreciate it. God bless.
Remember to subscribe today and hit the bell so you never miss another episode of the show with that trademark opener. From Washington, D.C., it's 13th and Park.